The first thing I wanted to say is that, you know, when we think about inquiry-based learning or knowledge building, it, for me, is sort of a dynamic and emergent process of learning in which the children's ideas are at the center of a classroom. Ideas that come from the children and are what the teacher uses to sort of respond to creating this environment for the children to develop a depth of understanding. And I wonder if we could, because both of you are teachers at different ends of the grades that we teach here, if you could give examples of what that might look like in your settings, or what you define inquiry or knowledge building to be.
Well, okay, I'll start since I'm in the early years in senior kindergarten. I think absolutely that children's ideas and their thoughts and questions are what drive our inquiry studies and our knowledge building. But I think before that can happen, that I as a teacher sit back and think, what is the big idea that I want to tackle this year or this term? So I spend a lot of time in the summer really thinking about what's it going to be, and often it's a one-word big idea. So it might just be trees or buildings or the human body. And I have learned over many years not to get too far along plotting what that's going to look like. Because what I'd like to do at the very beginning of the school year is open up this idea to the children, maybe start by contextualizing it, reading a story or a bunch of stories about it, talking to the kids about their own experiences that might be related to that. And then start asking them, well, what do you know about trees? What do you know about buildings? Where have you seen them? What do they look like? And starting to bring in their experiences and their ideas. And then that's what helps shape the direction that we're going to go. So, in fact, the big ideas is coming from me, but then how it's shaped and where we follow, that's what comes from their ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think something similar is, you know, the way it works for me at an older grade. I like to think of it, you know, since we're using metaphors, right? Like, I like to think about it as kind of like beginning and destination, right? Mm-hmm. Like the destination for the unit, for what I want the children to get to, yeah, that does come from me, or it comes from the curriculum, it comes from the big ideas. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you know, I'm doing a lot of thinking before we start about what that would look like, mm-hmm. right? What would it look like to have a class that understands, you know, say at my grade level, that understands, you know, electricity? Mm-hmm. What would that be? And but then how we get there, how we get to that destination, I think is the part that's really that you can't quite plan out, yeah. Right? That until you have worked with the children, until you've understood what they understand, mm-hmm. At the beginning, then you can't quite know. So I mean, I think I do something similar to what you talked about in terms of, at the very beginning, I just like to give the children experiences mm-hmm. with the topic that we're working on. So, you know, if it's electricity that we're doing, for example, I'd like to just throw out a whole bunch of batteries and wires and motors and light bulbs and whatever, and let them get to it and see what they understand, and let them try things and then ask them, well, why does the light turn on? Or why does it not turn on? And from there, you start to see, from those experiences, you get to start to see what they understand, what they don't, and then you can get also, you know, you can just have them ask questions, right? Ask what you want to know, right? What do you not understand? And then I think at the older grades, I think maybe a difference between the older grades and the younger ones a little bit might be that I think part of our job as the teacher then is to, once the children have been given the chance to you know, share what they know, what they understand at the beginning of a unit, it's about giving them the tools to answer those questions that they have, right? So
we do that too.
I'm sure you do, yeah, differently, right? Yeah.
But I think where the difference is that there would just be different expectations in terms of how they're going to express express their understanding at a different time.
Right.
So you need to be really thinking about, these kids are going to be going on to grade 7. Here are the skills that they need. And of course I'm thinking they're going on to grade 1. Here are the skills that they're going to need. But there's a little bit more leeway down in the early years, and because, you know, maturation plays such a huge, huge part of it. But I was thinking about astronomy and how both of us do astronomy so often. And for me, what's so interesting about it is, even though I may start on the first day thinking about it in a very similar way in different years, where we end up, what we end up studying, is totally taken by the kids. So one year it became all about the life cycle of stars, because that's what all the children's questions were about. And another year it became all about the relationship between the sun, the moon, and the earth. And this year it wasn't really about astronomy at all. We kind of pulled right back because of the kids' interest, and it turned out to be about weather and the layers of the atmosphere. And so I think that's one of the fascinating things about inquiry. And I think it would be the same when you do astronomy. You don't have, you know, 20 facts that you want the kids to end up with.
No.
You can have this broad topic, know what the big ideas are. I know that you're going to be talking about gravity. You're going to be talking about orbits, and you know, seasons might come up. You have a sense of all the different things that might come up. But what the children actually end up really focusing and engaging on, they're the ones that choose it, right?
Yeah, and it's a little different every year, right? But I think if I really want to be strict about it, you know, I do think that by the end, pretty much, even though the emphasis is sometimes different, right? Whether, you know, one class has a greater focus, say, on gravity or something like that by the end, and another group has had a greater focus on, you know, the cosmology of, you know, the Big Bang and that sort of thing, that the depth of learning and the meeting of those sort of big ideas on the curriculum, I think, ends up being about the same, right? You know, even though we've come at it from a different angle, right? It's again, it's like taking a different route to get there, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that the kind of the curriculum big ideas, as that's how I begin to think about the unit every time, right? And also just sort of my own synthesis of what's in the curriculum, you know, in terms of kind of big ideas, but you know, thinking about where you want to get to in terms of 2 or 3 kind of big understandings. Ideas. You know, so for my grade level in astronomy, that, you know, one of those is gravity, right? That gravity is a force in the universe that affects just about everything, right? That, you know, and for the children to have some idea how that works. You know, so sometimes we get to that point of that understanding through looking at, you know, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, and eclipses, and all sorts of things like that. And sometimes we get to it by looking at the Big Bang, right? But either way, we get there, right? And I think that's the, you know, it's amazing how it is different every time.
But because you've let them help chart the path of how you're going to get there, the engagement is totally different. Because they can feel, that they're helping move this forward. They're the ones deciding where they really want to place their interest. And you're coming back and helping them, you know, maybe tack a little bit to the right because you really want them to see this, or you're providing this experiment so this can get more deeply. But they feel like that they have the reins, that they're making big decisions about what they want to learn, right?
Yeah. And that's I think where the idea of skills and tools comes into it a little bit. And I think that's kind of one of the misconceptions when we talk to people about inquiry or knowledge building, right? Is they would kind of have the impression that this is not the type of teaching where you can develop skills. Right? And I guess I would say that I think it's exactly the opposite, right? It's the type of teaching where you can almost best develop skills, because how can a child better learn, say, how to write a hypothesis, right, in science or in carrying out an experiment? You know, what better opportunity for them to learn that than when they're doing an experiment that they want to do because they've devised it, it's the answer to their question, right? So I think, you know, teaching in this way, I mean, it probably doesn't give you so much the opportunity to stand in front of the class and say, everyone, here's how we write a hypothesis. But, you know, it allows you to, you know, sit down with small groups as they're creating experiments and say, like, okay, let's think about changing one variable, not two, not three, not four, in every step of your experiment. You know, let's write this. Let's write your method clearly. Let's do all of these things so that people can understand. You know,
I wanted to say that hearing you talk, the theory behind knowledge building is so clear in your understanding. And a few things I wanted to just sort of pull out. One, you talked about beginning with an experience where the children, you know, we often say we begin with children's questions, but that you might not have a question if you haven't had the experience. And you've given us examples of that. Or know that you've had the experience. That's right. So that idea, how the authenticness of, you know, being part, you know, real ideas, real problems is connected to motivation and engagement for the children. This idea of the value of idea diversity, many questions, many ideas to pursue, and in order to understand the value of one theory or an idea, we need to sort of compare that. And that's sort of, that is counter the sort of the misconception we sometimes get as teachers that our goal is to get to the right answer as quickly as possible without, you know, any distractions, but rather we want the learning to be a little bit messy. We want children to grapple and see, is it this, is it that? Where do I place this? How do I categorize it? And then you talk about how the ideas sort of, you know, continue to improve. My question to you is, that's a little bit, that sounds incredible, this idea that you both said you get to those curriculum big ideas, but the path may be different every time.